Hello, everybody. It's Marilyn Wilson here from RE Technology, and we're going to be talking about how to keep your brokerage afloat today. We've got a really interesting presentation for you. I think you're going to see that we're kind of talking about the future of where brokerage technology is going to go in the future. We're going to see a lot more of this as it comes along. So first, let me just introduce myself. I'm Marilyn Wilson, and I'm the co-founder of RE Technology and also the one of the founding partners of Wave Group. So we do a lot of work with brokerages of all sizes, as well as a lot of data providers and technology providers. So we've got a pretty good sense of how that this is kind of an exciting opportunity for everybody. And if we can go to the next slide, I'm going to introduce who we've got with us today. We've got a really interesting group of people, and also not a very shy group of people. So I'm sure you'll have fun today. Especially Mr. Jenny. Ken Jenny is the CEO of Transcend, a consulting firm that works with many of the most progressive brokerages and technology companies in the industry. Bill Gamelli, who's the COO of William Raveis Real Estate, one of the top 10 brokers in America, and does some really exciting things in there, which we're going to see. And then last but certainly not least, we have York Baur, who's the CEO of Moxi Works, and who's also got a long tenured history of understanding really how the practicalities of how successful brokerages work, and they've been able to bake that into the whole Moxi Works platform, which we're going to see in a little while. So with that, let's go to the next slide and we'll get this thing rolling. I wanted to just let everybody know that we really encourage you to ask us questions throughout the conversation. And I'll be jumping in to ask the appropriate person to answer it for you as we see fit. And then we will also have questions right at the end of the day or at the end of the session. But if you see over on the right-hand side in that where that blue and gray box is, you'll see a little tab that says questions. If you just click on that, you can answer or ask your question in there, and then we'll do our best to get it answered for you. Okay? So if anybody has any questions on that, you can drop it in the chat box, but hopefully it's pretty simple. And with that, let's get moving. So I'm going to go to the next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to York, who's going to kind of set the stage about what's going on here. But just give you a little perspective from the our practice at Wave Group and RE Technology. When we talk to brokerages, we hear so many times that they're kind of almost, I don't want to say overwhelmed, and almost a little intimidated by where is this technology world we're going, and how do they deal with it, and who should they choose as a partner, and how do they choose them, and how do they compete effectively? It's just a really scary time for brokers. In addition to just trying to keep their head above water, making sure that they can get more inventory in their market, there's a lot of things going on. So the conversation we're having today is very timely, I think, for brokers of all sizes. But I'm going to let York's going to kind of set the stage for us on kind of what's going on out there. So York, take it away.
Thanks, Marilyn, and greetings to everybody out there in our audience. Great to be speaking with you, and happy Halloween. I'm a technologist by trade and by background. I've been at Moxi Works for the last 5 years, but enterprise software companies prior to that. And I think what's going on in real estate, and that we all see and deal with every day with technology coming into the space, is something that's happened actually some time ago in many of the other markets that I've seen over my career. And I think it's really interesting to watch not just the technology stuff that you all see every day when you open up your Inman News or other mailings that you might get, but to look at the money flows. And if you look at the chart that we're on here, it shows in that chart the amount of money, both from venture capitalists and private equity firms, that have been invested year over year in real estate technology specifically. And as you can see, it's a steady upward slope, culminating in this year being a record year, and with over $1 billion being invested. And what that, I think, means, and Marilyn, you commented on it being overwhelming, what that means is there are going to be a steady stream of new technologies coming into what is already, at least in my opinion, a very crowded technology space. There are hundreds already of companies making various bits and bobs for real estate technology, and that's only going to get more so. And if you look at the trend with some of the company names on the left of the slide, I mean, Keller is talking about access to $1 billion in funds, in addition to their own $43 million that they've committed to developing technology for the Keller network. You look at Redfin's IPO recently. I just checked, and in fact, they're valued at $1.89 billion today, so almost $2 billion valuation on that, which is obviously a technology-driven brokerage. And the same is true of EXP. And then you have this whole idea of artificial intelligence and chatbots. There's just, the message here is there's just a slew of stuff entering the market. And I think at Moxi Works, at least, we see our obligation being to brokers, helping you maintain profitability and grow your business. And when it regards technology, I think the most significant thing that you can contemplate is, how do I make all this stuff work together? Regardless of what I choose, how do I prevent each of these things that I might use in my brokerage and make available to my agents from being its own little island of technology with its own little island of data? Because, to quote a CTO of another brokerage, building bridges is really expensive. So if we could change to the next slide, please. I submit to you that what you need to think of is, what is the power strip for all this technology in my business? And I'll paint a visual here for you in addition to what's on the slide. If you look under your desk, you probably have a power strip and a bunch of things plugged into that. And when you buy something new and plug it into that power strip, you don't even think about it. And when something gets old and you unplug it and replace it with something else, you don't think about it either. You just plug it in and it works. That's what we submit to you, is how you need to think about a platform, a technology platform, not a bunch of individual applications, but truly a platform for how all this stuff can work together. And I'll use two quick analogies for you. One is Microsoft Windows, that I'm sure we all are familiar with. If you look at the Windows installation you probably have on your desk as we're talking here, you don't think about what apps from what vendors you can put on there. You know that any app for Windows will plug in there and share data with any other application within Windows and print alongside all the other applications and so forth. So that's the idea. The more modern analogy is the iPhone or the Android phone, both of which have either the Apple Store or the Google Store. You simply download an app from one of those stores, depending on which phone you have, and it simply just works. And again, shares data, your contacts, your calendar, whatever else you have on your phone, just like all the other applications do. And that's what we believe is absent in the real estate world. And that's what we're trying to do with the Moxi Cloud open platform. So if you can go to the next slide, please. This is a bit of a depiction of at least conceptually what we're trying to do with the Moxi Cloud. And before I go any further, let me submit to you the following. If you remember only one thing from today's webinar, it is this: get control of your data. And I don't mean just your property data, because we can argue about whether we've lost control of that as the brokerage community to some degree. But what about your agent data? What about your brokerage and branding data? What about, critically, the consumer data? All your agents know people and have relationships with those people, and you yourself as a brokerage have relationships. Where are you housing the data for those things? And if the answer isn't that you have them all in one place, where all the applications that you might use across your brokerage and your agents can access that data and contribute to it, then I think you're going to be in for a challenge as these large players with these millions or billions of dollars come after the market, because that's exactly what they're doing. They've built their own platforms that contain all this data that can be operated on by all these different applications. And again, per the power strip analogy, you should be able to plug products in from any company, have them work together, and likewise unplug products and replace them as you so choose. So that's really the topic for today. And I'll submit to you the final thing, given that it's Halloween and many of you on this call, I'm sure later this week, will be attending the NAR conference in Chicago, as will I, and Ken Jenny will be there as well. Many of us are going. And I'm going to steal a line from you, Ken, here, given that it is Halloween. And you so aptly put it, when you go to the trade show part of any of these events, NAR included, it really is like adult trick-or-treating. You walk around with your bag, and these vendors fill it with the latest brochure, and you get back home or back to your hotel room and you kind of spill the bag out, and you really don't know what to make of it and end up throwing half of it away. And I feel like that is unfortunately the world of real estate technology. And what we're setting out to do with the Moxi Cloud is to rationalize all that and allow you a lot more flexibility in what you choose and how you evolve the things you choose, but yet have them all work together. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Marilyn. I guess I'll turn it back to you maybe for some further questions and comments as we move through.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to talk to that concept for a second. So what I think is kind of neat is that, you know, there are some other people that are kind of talking about open platforms, but they usually do have sort of one center technology that you have to buy first. And usually it's a website solution that becomes like the center point of things, and then you can add on from there. Just comment on that. Is your platform like that, or is it truly you could begin, you know, if you look at all the little buttons down on the bottom, I could begin with lead gen, or I could begin with home services, or I could begin with client gifting. Could I begin with any one of those in that add-on, or how does it work?
Yes, it's a great point. The short answer is yes. We do not dictate that you have to have a given product from us to start with our open platform. And you're right, most vendors will say, oh, sure, all right, we have an open platform, and you have to have our website, our brokerage website, in order to get access to that. Well, all of us on this call, I'm sure, have experienced the sheer and adulterated pain and displeasure of having to switch out one website vendor for another. If now your ability to connect all the other technologies in your brokerage is dependent on you sticking with that one website vendor, we don't believe that's in a broker's best interest. And so we don't mandate that. You can arbitrarily, in our world, you can arbitrarily change out not only the products from us, but from the now over 36 partners that are plugging in per some of these categories that you see in many others here that plug into the open platform.
Well, let me ask you just a kind of a practical question too, and this is why I hear complaints a lot, and this is what slows people down, right? So I've built let's say I've got a CRM system, a client relationship management system like Moxi Engage, which you show on your chart here, and you know, my agents have populated all of their contacts in there, and they've had communications over the years with people, and then their broker comes in and says, oh, I want to switch from whatever one you're on over to a new one. How much data, if you're in this sort of plug and play world, how much data actually gets lost if you decide you want to unplug one and plug in a new one, or does it get lost in the new context?
That's a great question, and of course, I don't mean to suggest the world is absolutely perfect, but in general, when you switch from one player to another, the majority of the data is going to stay, and it's not just in the CRM instance; it's true broadly across all these things that plug in. Of course, every app has its own proprietary things that it does, but the concept of the cloud is that the data, the important data for any of these categories, lives on in the cloud, regardless of what apps you have plugged in at any given time. And to use the CRM specific example, one of the things we've done with the Moxi Cloud is to integrate it with Google and Microsoft clouds for email calendaring and contacts. So that's where we're constantly automatically syncing the data into those environments. So if you change out the CRM, it's fine, you can, and all of that data will come, it remains in the cloud synced with either Google or Microsoft on whichever the agent has, and when the new CRM comes in, it can gain access to that same data. So we're really trying to make it persist regardless of what technologies a broker chooses. Because it's going to change. That's the thing we know. No matter how much research and care you put into your selection process, it's 2 years from now, it's going to change, right?
Well, and does this concept also allow for almost segmentation within your own brokerage? So I've got I'm making these up, right? A super producer that's selling 150 houses. They have a team behind them. They're rock stars. I don't want to lose them, but they don't want to use what everyone else is using. Can I still plug in something special for them and then have other solutions for different people?
Of course, and in fact, a more, I'd say, a more common thing that we see all the time, excuse me, I was just on a call this morning actually with a large brokerage about this, is the idea of an E-team. So you may have a specific set of products or even custom websites that do lead gen and have a very elaborate lead flow process, et cetera, that's really only appropriate for an E-team or internal lead qual sort of company, or maybe you've outsourced it to a lead qualification company. That only affects a very small number of agents, typically, in a large brokerage. And so you might have one set of technologies that's optimized for lead generation and optimization. And that's separate from the mainstream tech that the individual contributor agent's using to work with their sphere, for example. So yes, this enables that sort of flexibility.
Yeah, and the same thing could happen like if you have like transaction coordinators, you can enable transaction management for them and do something else for the agent that may just has to get them information, right? That's the idea. And so let me ask another. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say to that point. I mean, to use specific vendor examples, we have partnerships with DocSense, SkySlope, and Dotloop that all plug into this as well. So that's not just the stuff from us. It's the idea that you enter it once and it's available then in any application. To use your transaction coordinator example.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, perfect. And now, you know, some brokers, I know you guys work with some of the larger brokers. Of course, they probably have their own tech teams and, you know, people that can help leverage this. And the idea, you know, to me as a non-technical person, when you say plug and play, I'm like, great, it's like turn on my TV. Or it's like when I buy a new Mac computer, I just go to the store and they automatically transfer all the data. I don't even have to think about it, right? You do all the work. But if you're in a brokerage that maybe doesn't have a full-on, you know, tech team, does this plug and play thing still work? I mean, do you need a lot of internal skill to do it, to make it happen?
It's a great question. I think the answer is it depends. So if you're choosing the as I mentioned earlier, over 36 integrations that we have that are already plugged into the platform, things like the signing on, you know, your roster being available to those applications and the data sharing working automatically, that is pretty much plug and play. And I'll use examples of partners like Spacio, for example, or Imprev as two examples of the many partners that we have. Literally, you flip the switch and all that stuff just works. But Bill, I think Bill at Raveis, I think you're an example of perhaps the other side, which is in a large broker environment, where you've done a lot to customize not only the configurations you have, but also build your own technologies and have the wherewithal to build your own technologies. Then the integrations will require a little bit more effort because we're doing it on a more custom basis.
Yes,
gotcha.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yep. Okay, good. Well, I think this is a really helpful conversation. I think, do you have another slide, York, want to kind of just give us an overview of the types of things that are involved? Oh yeah, here we go. Let's talk about this.
I think that might be more your and Bill's territory here on the shiny objects.
Yeah, there's been. I mean, I love this analogy because I think you know, people that have ever seen the movie Up, it's like squirrel. There's a squirrel. Look, there's another squirrel. Oh my God, what do you do with that squirrel? Like, and there's a lot of things that get thrown at brokers all the time about, you know, this is the thing. This is the thing that's going to fix it for you. And we all know there is no one technology that's going to fix your brokerage. It's a lot harder than that. So I think that's what we're going to talk a little bit about is how do you know the difference between a diamond and a shiny object? And importantly, one of the things that we try to help our brokers understand, and that's why we love the Moxi Cloud concept, is you can't just look at what you need today. You need to look at what you need tomorrow and the next day and the next day, and what's going to give you the flexibility to adjust as the market requires you to, right? I mean, you can't just say it's today and we're good and we're going to lock in and we're done and that's it. That's not how it works in technology.
Hey, Marilyn.
Yeah, that's
so. True. Yeah, Ken, jump in.
Oh, you know, it's killing me to be quiet this long.
I know it is.
Ken,
I'm
Jenny,
sorry.
how are you?
We're great.
I wanted to add one thing to what York was talking about with the trick or treat analogy of going adult trick or treating in these vendor fairs. I think it might be appropriate for someone to look at a vendor and say trick or treat, because it could be either. As you go from booth to booth, the real question is, you know, everybody doesn't want to have a shiny object. They want to have a diamond. But when you pick a shiny object, it's been very painful to unplug it, to York's analogy. And our industry is so diverse on the brokerage side, 40 to 50,000 brokers who can't all be, as York said, one of the bigger brokers or a big network. So how can they afford to do this? I know brokers today that are of large size that are spending over $1 million a year just integrating different solutions. And when someone goes to unplug one, whoever made that decision usually loses their job because it's so expensive to trade out. We're not going to be able to find all the diamonds on the first shot, but if you don't have a diamond and you do have a shiny object and you do have a platform, it's much easier to change it out, much less painful. And I think that's an added benefit of the fact that innovation will continue to happen in our industry, and a lot of people will be bringing you things to look at, consider. And if you do have a platform, it's much easier to plug it in and play, and unplug it and play with something else. And that's something we haven't had the luxury of in the business. So that's a big benefit of having a platform in your brokerage.
It is kind of like having an app store in some respects, right? So if you get on a, let's use a stupid example. We all have games on our phone, right? You get sick of it, just unload it and add another one, and it's done in seconds and it's seamless. That's exactly what we're talking about here, right?
Well, anyone would like a nice digital camera, just call me. I have about 4 of them that I unplugged out of my power strip, and now I just use the iPhone. So, I mean, it's not that they were bad. At the time, they were great, but something got better. Things improved, so you had to unplug it. And as you said, now with the cloud on our personal devices, it's easy to download information. Same parallel with Moxi Cloud.
Exactly. All right, so why don't we jump over to the next slide, and York, maybe you can help us, understand when we say broker platform, because these are not words that we use in real estate very often. It sounds kind of techy and a little overwhelming. So help us understand what that means.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Unfortunately, I think our industry, and by that I mean the technology industry for real estate, we tend to overcomplicate things, and we like using our big words. And unfortunately, the word platform is one of the most abused words, in my opinion, that exists, because everyone is referring to everything as a platform. In some cases, and I find this particularly comical, even specific features are referred to as a platform. A platform really has a very specific meaning, and that is this idea of the power strip that we've been talking about. And again, your phone operating system, that's a platform. Windows is a platform. It's not the things that plug into it. Those are not the platform. And so I guess the question, if I were in the audience and kind of glazing over with all the tech speak, is do you have one place in your brokerage, one technology place where all your data lives? And if the answer to that is no, then you don't have a platform. And so I think that's probably the most simplistic way to see it. And then the open versus closed is what I was referring to earlier. A lot of vendors still say you need to get everything from us, which is unrealistic, because no company, Moxi Works included, can be good at everything. The next step is the one you mentioned earlier, Marilyn, which is, well, we can plug other things in, but you have to have our website. Also not truly open. Truly open means that you can choose whatever you like. Gotcha.
Okay. And so just to clarify that, what is a platform thing again? So if you have a listing, it needs to be entered into 4 or 5 different systems. So I need to put it in the transaction management system, and in the accounting system, and the place where I get my flyers built, and I have to put it in the MLS, and I have to put it 4 other places, which is I think how most brokers work, right? That's not a platform. That's a waste of time and money.
That's right. That's you've articulated even better than I could, Marilyn. It's basically, if you're entering data multiple times, by definition, you're not on a platform. You have these little islands of technology, each of which has to have its own copy of the data, because none of them are sharing the data between them. When I talked about other industries having solved this, you think of other industries that you work with. If you have to enter the stuff, and I'll use the doctor as an example. The only other industry I really am familiar with that doesn't do this very well is the medical industry. Every time you go to a new doctor, you start at the beginning filling out the sheet that's been Xeroxed 47 times with your same information again, right? Because none of that is being shared. It's that same idea.
Gotcha. Okay. Keep going.
Well, I guess I'd love to have this be less the York show and more the Ken and Bill show. So maybe.
Okay. Yeah, let's turn it over. Maybe Lauren, if you can switch over to the next slide, and then we'll jump into Bill. So just a quick overview of what's available. Currently, it sounds like it's going to change over time, but here's what's available currently, just as an example.
Yeah, exactly. And this will be my final slide here, so you guys don't have to experience death by PowerPoint. But this is just a sampling of these now over 3 dozen partners that I mentioned are plugging into the platform. And I signed another deal just yesterday on behalf of Moxi Works. So this is a growing network that we hope to expand to 100 or more over time. The final comment I'll make, and of course we're happy to talk about specifics on these, any of these. And Bill, I think you're going to talk to some of the stuff you're doing with some of these partners on the platform. But the message here, I think, is this. Every brokerage on this call has the imperative to create a unique proposition for their consumers and agents that they serve. And our belief is that, it's like mixing a cocktail. Why would I go get a martini at this bar? It's because it's just the best martini for me, even though they're all martinis. And so choosing exactly how you mix that cocktail of technology to support your brand proposition, that's really the game here. And if you're just taking a one-size-fits-all thing off the shelf, by definition, you're leveling your own playing field. And I feel like brokerages have an opportunity to differentiate themselves through technology. And that's why we're, as you can see, not only aggregating a bunch of partners, but even multiple partners in the same category. So if you look at marketing as an example at the top of the slide, or lead generation below that, there are many, many good products and companies out there that can help you. So it comes down to not only which product you like, but which company best fits whatever your value proposition is as a brokerage. And that's really what we're trying to enable by having all these partnerships in place.
So it could be, different price points too, right? If I want to tiptoe in, I don't want to spend too much. I'll go with a less expensive one and see if my agents use it, and if I feel like they're getting value, then I might upgrade down the road. But it gives me the chance to do that really easily. Just gives everybody more flexibility, is what it looks like to me.
That's right, and you make an interesting point, Marilyn. One of the things that we've run across at a number of brokerages, and Bill, you can probably comment on this too in a minute. They kind of have one of everything. They have too much stuff, and therefore it's overwhelming to their agent, and very little of it gets used. So our approach and what we advocate as you start down this path is to keep it as simple as possible. Pick a few core things, make those succeed, and then as that happens, you can easily plug in the next thing or the new thing or the thing that emerges 12 months from now that you didn't know about without overwhelming your agent.
And York, the other thing we talked about is the bad word in technology that puts up big dollar signs is the word custom. The platform allows the brokerage company to look at this menu, consider this a menu, and to customize a solution for their brokerage business. So you can pick and choose people that you prefer or think would work best with your agent population or your market, or have great customer service versus others, or you've heard a lot of good things about them, and you can customize your own unique brokerage platform using the platform.
That's right.
And that allows great flexibility without a lot of cost involved.
Yeah, and you don't have to have your own CTO to be able to do it, which is most people don't. So yeah, it's like this technology stuff's overwhelming. If you can just focus on what's the value to my agents and ultimately to their clients, and not have to worry about how to make it all work, it's so much easier. You just focus on the business side of things. So I think that's why a lot of brokers are really like, oh my God, thank you, somebody's fixed this problem for me, because I am not a technologist. I don't want to be a technologist, and I don't want to have to hire one. So it's awesome.
And I think the last thing, Marilyn, one more thing, if I could say it, as an old franchisor with two big franchises, this allows a broker to have a transferable platform, meaning this platform is created through Moxi Works, through Moxi Cloud for the brokerage company. I've said for a long time, every broker in the country is independent. You may rent a name from somebody or a system of some kind, but all brokers, whether you're franchised or independent, are truly independent brokers. And they should be creating these operating systems for their brokerage companies so that no matter what you do with your brand, you have this as the core of your business. It helps you generate transactions.
Good point. So you still get to maintain local control regardless of, like you say, which brand you're renting. That's a good point. All right, why don't we flip it over now too, and let's jump in and let's let Bill talk. The rest of us are dominating, like always. It's a bunch of type A's on the call. You never know what's going to happen. So we're sorry, Bill.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So William Raveis, for those that don't know, is a very, very powerful brokerage. Not only has real estate, but also mortgage and insurance. And they're actually the #1 family-owned business in the Northeast, and #1 or #9 in the entire country, according to RealTrends. So they've got a large scope and have done some really interesting things in a lot of contexts, but this is just one that we wanted to talk to. So thank you, Bill, for coming today. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So maybe if we could just kind of get your perspective on this, the advantages of this idea of this open platform, thing. And I know you guys you have technologists, you have CTOs, but, why does this make sense, or how did you see it work in your business?
Well, it's interesting. There was a couple of things that York said that sort of hit me. And when he was speaking about, a large brokerage versus a small brokerage, and larger brokerages have a tendency to have technology teams, even as a large company, and having a technology team. With the way in which technology was going, it was becoming overwhelming for us. I mean, just managing an email server and dealing with the constant phishing attacks and the spam and everything really got to the point of for us to really make the decision whether or not we wanted to embrace the cloud first and foremost. And so when we embarked upon making that decision, speaking to what platform you're going to use, we had a really, really tough time trying to make that big decision about, do we go with Microsoft or do we go with Google? And, by the time we got done with that whole process, I mean, it really became a shootout at the OK Corral. And we brought both companies in here to pitch to us. And Microsoft ended up winning the gunfight. And so for us, when we talk about a platform, we have embraced Microsoft and the SharePoint platform. And we spent a lot of time thinking about how do we take this platform and build upon it. And I think York made the point about, platform is an overused word. I like to go back to real estate, since that's where I started, and talk about the foundation. And the foundation is that platform, and then you build upon that. And I know it's sort of an old analogy, but for me it works because it really sort of defines, or has defined, I should say, the direction in which we've proceeded. So what we did was we embraced Microsoft's SharePoint platform, and after having several meetings with our technology advisory groups across several states, one of the drivers for our agents was they wanted simplicity. We had come off of over 7 years, come off of another national platform where there were multiple menus. The same tools were in different menus, and so they just said, we just want it simple. We want to be able to go to this platform. We want to be able to, touch on the tools that we need. And so we spent a lot of time percolating the tools to the surface so that the agents could very quickly get to them. So simplicity was a huge driver for us and for our agents. That's what they asked for, and that's how we designed our SharePoint platform. And part of that transition was also to come off of our old CRM. And when we started looking at Moxi Works, one of the things that really got me excited and got our team here excited was the simplicity and the open platform that Moxi Works provided as well. So that was really sort of how we got to Moxi Works. So Moxi Works is, in effect, a platform that plugs into our platform, if you sort of think about it that way. And then from there, we've been able to build a variety of other tools.
And so tell us, how has that simplicity thing paid off? Like, do you see, people, your agents using the systems more? Are they getting you feedback that, wow, this is really saving me time and energy, I feel more professional? That, you getting that kind of feedback from them?
Well, it's just starting for us, because we started rolling out Moxi Engage back in August, and now we're in the frenzy of rolling out Moxi Present, which is going to be replacing our old CMA program. And I think training is such a critical component of any platform or any tool that you roll out. And one of the things that I always say to agents is, don't embrace technology just for the sake of having technology. If it's going to drive profits, it's going to increase your efficiencies, it's something you want to think about. And having been out in the field and having been involved with the actual implementation of the program and doing some training myself, a lot of agents have come to me and said, Bill, we brought in all our contacts from the other system. Now, what do we do with them? And I think that that's where training becomes so important, because getting them to understand the power and the simplicity of what Moxi does really creates an adoption rate, I think, that far surpasses our expectations. As of September, we had already reached our adoption rate that we had hoped for by year end. So the simplicity factor is critically important as well. And I think, looking forward, and you talk about the future, much of what we're doing right now is to look at how we can integrate, other technologies as well. Because, I think we spoke to this briefly today, but let's face it. I mean, we have suffered in this industry for years having disparate data sets. I know when I started in the business, I started off with, index cards with a rubber band around them, thrown in the backseat of the car so the kids' muddy feet could chomp all over them. And then we moved to spreadsheets, and, I'd have a marketing database, and I'd have a CRM database, and I'd have, my company database, and, none of them talk to each other. And as York said, the bidirectional synchronization between Office, Microsoft Office, Calendar, and Contacts, is transparent to the agent. So it doesn't matter if they're in Moxie or if they're in Outlook, that contact's getting in there. And that's a huge advantage. They're on the phone and they're at to York's point, at a soccer field talking to a prospective client. They put that contact into that phone. It's in your Outlook and it's in your Moxie. That's true integration. And that's really the direction that as a company we're continuing to move towards.
That's awesome. So you said you're looking at other things, like do you see integrating, lead gen into this, or transaction management, or any of those other types of things down the road as well?
All of the above. Interesting. When you had that prior slide up with some of the partners that Moxie is working with, it's so funny because we are really, now that we have Moxie in place, we're looking to them and who they're partnering with to sort of help us in our decision making. And so, having API and having that type of integration is an absolute requirement for any vendor that we're working with. And on the other side of the coin, we've actually brought some partners to York's attention and his company's attention that we thought might be good partners that we're currently working with. So, it really has become embracing the simplicity of it, and then working with partners that have this ability to trade this data back and forth, so we can get to the point in time where there doesn't have to be any duplicate or triplicate entry. I mean, down the road, we would love to tie in our mortgage and insurance companies and sort of do the same thing. But right now, we're sort of focusing on our agents and our lead gen, and actually we're looking at transaction management. We made the decision today on a vendor that we're going to be moving forward with. So,
well, you brought up a really neat point too, because there is a pretty comprehensive list that we just looked at, and it looks like that list sounds like it's going to be growing. But I like what you just said too, that if there's something, back to Ken's point about customization, there's a tool that you found that your agents have embraced that you feel is really true to the Raveis brand, and you want to keep going, that it's not impossible that even I don't want to call them legacy products, but products you already have relationships with could become part of this at some point too.
Absolutely. And we've been very lucky that we've had a few partners that have grown with us over the last 15 or 20 years, and their willingness to work not only with us, but with Moxie and some of our other partners has really made it much easier for us to sort of build upon the SharePoint platform that we've embarked on. And another thing I wanted to say, if I could just interject real quickly, is that what York said about having to have the vendor's website, it was just something that just sort of drove me crazy, because there were good back ends, but we've already got a great website. We've invested a lot of money and time and energy designing and building the back end on a great website. We did not want to have to embrace a website that, in our opinion, was not as good as ours. And as he said, that move to change website vendors is a tremendous amount of work. So, again, if we have a great tool, but they're requiring that we use their website, that's not for us. We just don't want to go down that road. And what we loved about Moxi Works was the fact that we don't use their intranet because we have the SharePoint platform. We don't need websites because we have websites. But man, their Present and Engage program is fantastic and was a perfect fit into our platform. So.
So as a COO, I mean, obviously one of your jobs is to create profitability or to help enhance profitability at Raveis. Do you see this as a way for increased profitability in the business? I mean, we have such tight margins in real estate. Does this help ultimately, do you think?
Well, I think the answer is yes, but from two perspectives. I think number one is that the way in which the Engage CRM works, it focuses the agent on developing their sphere of influence. That was a huge driver for us. That was our mantra before we even looked at Moxie. And so the simplicity, the focus on the SOI were things that were really, really important to us, and increasing the agent's productivity. And so, yes, that was really, really important for us. The sort of the next step for us is now migrating into a transaction management platform, which is sort of the handoff from Moxie once a transaction goes under contract. But from that point, again, is choosing a partner where this data can now be transferred very seamlessly between Moxie and the transaction management platform is, again, part of the efficiencies that it brings to the table for an agent. And again, agents want to spend their time in front of prospective buyers and sellers. They don't want to worry about having to go through this long laundry list and manual process of marketing and then closing a transaction. So I see all of those things as helping us to drive profitability. And then the other point is that, we talked about mortgage, we talked about insurance, the ability to now start to integrate and share data between all of our affiliate companies gives us more opportunities to sell, our products and the one-stop shopping that we know a lot of consumers like, and be able to share those leads and those resources amongst our company. So that's the other part of driving profitability as well, because as we all know, the margins on mortgages are much better than they are in real estate these days.
Right. So if you can improve your conversion rate over there, it's really helping the company profitability. Have you seen cost savings in Kevin mentioned that $1.5 million investment in integration. Do you see savings on that side of the house too, just on the technology development side?
Well, I do, because I think, with APIs today, the cost, the entry point for that type of integration has gone way, way down. I mean, I remember years ago, it would cost 5 to 10 times that amount to have custom integrations. Today, it's this plug and play mentality. And if you can find vendors that do that, then, you're way ahead of the game as far as costs go.
Gotcha. So maybe
Marilyn?
one final question, and we'll jump it over to Ken, who's dying, right? He can't help himself. Go ahead, Ken.
I love what Bill's saying. I was just going to say, Bill's making some great points. And I think we forget, for the brokers on the phone, we forget that, I'm looking at Bill's bio here, 4,000 agents in his organization are looking to him to be a leader. And I would say, to understand what a platform really is, it's the foundation of your operating system. It's the powered by part that people don't necessarily see, but it makes it a workable operating system for agents. Agents aren't unlike brokers. They go trick-or-treating as well. They'll be at NAR in Chicago in a week or so, and they'll be as confused as all the brokers that are there. They're looking for leadership. I think what Bill's talking about and what William Raveis is doing would make that company stand aside in my mind as an agent. I was an agent at one time. That you have an operating system. It isn't 16 different sign-ons. It isn't asking you for data 15 different times. It is a real system. It is a real business. And I don't want to do that as an agent. I want to go get more listings and make more sales using the system. But if brokers take the leadership role in applying a platform to their business, it creates a unique and customized operating system for their companies. And I applaud Bill and what he's doing in helping 4,000 agents at least understand that better.
Yeah, actually, let's jump over to Ken, because let's go down that road a little bit, because I think it's an important topic for us to talk about. How, again, we're talking big concept here, and most brokers love big concept, but they love sales and revenue more, and they like profitability and GCI even more than that. If you work with tons of brokers, I'm sure some that are Moxi Works clients too. How do they translate what is a kind of a complicated idea to a recruiting and retention story? How do you make this make sense to an agent?
Well, I think that agents, if you listen to what I just said, that agents are spending a lot of their time trying to figure out what they need to be successful. And they'll go and find something, and it'll be totally standalone island, You know, it's not like the mainland U.S. It's like the Hawaiian Islands. You got to go get in a boat or an airplane to get from one to another. And as much time as they spend in doing that should be applied towards things that are more productive. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, and the brokers are telling me, is forget the business side where you're reducing costs and so forth. That's invisible to an agent. They don't care how much you're going to save as a company for integration of products. They're looking for the system. And the system in the environment of the cloud or in Moxi Cloud is a very flexible system. So if a number of your people think you made the wrong decision and they're major producers and they say this isn't working, you don't want them to go out and find something that works for themselves uniquely. You want to be able to act to what they're saying as a company, to take their feedback and say, maybe we need a new vendor for this category, and maybe there's something better out there. And it doesn't take an act of God then to plug that in and unplug the other one. I mean, it's going to help the brokerage, but yes, the agents are looking for leadership, and agents are your best source for how things are working. Are they making more money using this system? Is it helping you get more listings? Is it doing things that you want to stay with our company because it's helping you be more productive? But in the past, when you found something that you had picked as a shiny object and not a diamond, and you had to unplug it, it was like, well, folks, let's just make that work. Maybe you aren't doing it right. And agents would just go do their own thing. I think this allows a broker the flexibility to say, hey, a majority of our people don't think this is working, or this vendor's failed, or they're undercapitalized, or they haven't lived up to their promises. We need to make a change. And it's, like I said, it's not like, you know, reinventing the fuel system on the space shuttle. It's easy to do. And I think if a broker is looking at 4,000 agents in Bill's case to be more productive, take this whole operating system off their table. They don't need to go trick-or-treating. They don't need to figure this out. They don't need to sign in 50 different times and put their data in 60 different places. If you make that easy for them, I think they'd see you as a leader and want to stay with you.
Well, and on the other side, if you're trying to recruit someone that has their absolute favorite tool, sounds like you can bring that to Moxi Cloud and say, I got to get this team or this person, and I've got to get this one integrated. It sounds like that's a possibility. I mean, not with all technology, obviously, but with newer technology, it's possible.
You bet. Just to reemphasize what you just said and what you commented on there. And yes, thank you for having brought, as I recall, a couple different partner opportunities to us. In fact, most of that list of 36 that I was showing earlier, not all of them, but probably 75% of them came through broker recommendations to us. So we are very open-minded about integrating new partnerships based on the recommendations of our brokerage clients.
That's awesome. So like, I keep coming back to that because it seems like the hardest thing is when some people get sophisticated enough, back to your question, Ken, that they've already done their trick-or-treating and they've found their Snickers bar and they absolutely have to have it. You don't have to say you have to give up your Snickers bar and you got to use Nookie Way when you come over here. You can say, great, bring your Snickers bar with you and come on over. That seems like a big advantage for recruiting.
I mean, the integration question, if you look back in 1995 when Office was a big deal and a big cube with drawers, I don't know if anyone remembers that. It was about how do you get all this stuff to work? You know, I came from an era where we had Lotus 1-2-3 and WordPress and Harvard Graphics. I mean, that shows you how old I am, and HP word processing. And nothing worked together. So we're very ineffective and inefficient as a business. Unfortunately, in real estate, we've stayed that way for a long time while other businesses have moved forward. We didn't have the custom Word and the custom Excel to make it work for real estate. Now you don't need to do that. There's a number of vendors that Moxi Works has identified that have, taken the API, integrated the cloud. So now you can go get real estate specific applications to work in your business with great flexibility. And I hate to say this, but we're not an industry to really adopt a lot of technology. We usually love to hate something more than adopt. But there are enough examples in our industry of people who don't know anything's going on at all, that this would be a competitive advantage for any broker, in my opinion, because a lot of brokers are just looking the other way on the subject and leaving it up to their agents. And their agents are in a great deal of pain. So coming to an environment like Raveis and having this already mapped and available for an agent is a competitive advantage.
For sure. Yeah, Ken, again, you work with tons of the smartest people in the industry. What other advantages do you see for having this kind of a platform? And is this really a game changer, do you think, ultimately for brokerages that get it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the future, and for those on the call that are brokers and agents, there's no question that for the first time, at least in my 38 years in this business, that the consumer plays a major role in our future. And I say that in sincerity. I mean, for a long time, it was who is our customer? Is the broker's customer the consumer or the agents? I think the agents and the brokers need to really look at the consumer real estate experience and making things available to consumers like transaction management, where digital forms are available, integrated into their system. Being able for an agent to take their 600, 700 people in their sphere and do something with them to keep in touch so that they don't wander off to a portal or somewhere else to do business is going to be more and more important. But if agents don't have access to these systems and brokers don't have an effective way to make them available to agents, the consumer experience is not going to advance. They won't even know these technologies exist because we're not using them because they're too difficult to use and they're not integrated. So I think this will ultimately play into providing an improved consumer real estate experience for those brokers who get it.
Can this help with, and I just came from Phoenix, so they're feeling pain probably more than most markets are, but there's, a lot of broker concepts that are emerging now that, discount / basically free. I mean, there was one in Phoenix now where an agent can join for $17 a month. Does this help a broker that wants to truly do full service compete in those businesses, do you think? Is that going to help them?
Well, I think that, I'll go back to leadership. You have to look at the model the agent's most comfortable with based on their commitment to the business. Some networks prefer to have agents that are lower production, higher per transaction income. I mean, I'm not going to go there. We could be all day on the phone talking about those variables. But right. I think if our industry were to garner an operating platform like so many businesses have around Apple or Microsoft or Google, we would be much further ahead as an industry than we are now by doing things independently and disintegrated.
Yeah, and if I can jump in quickly on this, Marilyn, I think having come from technology, not from real estate, I joined Moxi Works, as I said, 5 years ago, so I feel like a bit of a veteran now. But looking at other industries, the thing that strikes me about real estate is, on average, there are about 5 million transactions a year, period. So it's not like, well, we can grow the market. No, it's a question of what part of the market are you going to wrest from your competitors? But turning that around, and this is my comment about why it's so important to put all your data in one place, in particular consumer data. The most valuable asset any brokerage or agent has, in my personal opinion, it's the database of relationships, of sphere. And Bill, this is to your earlier point, why I applaud you for having made that a core tenet even before our relationship. If you get your agents focused and your brokerage focused on the people you already have some form of relationship with, it's a way to prevent those from getting stolen by the portal du jour or the broker down the street. And I feel like that's a competitive threat that brokers understand, because technology really is the key to that. I mean, you can't possibly, in our system now, by the way, in the cloud, the average agent has 400 people in their cloud database tied to their email. 400 people. There's no human being on the planet that can keep track of 400 people. And so that's why technology is needed. Believe it or not, while I come from the technology industry, I'm actually not that much of a technologist. I mean, it'd be great if we didn't have to deal with all this stuff, but the reality is it's the only way to make an agent great with the people they know and that know, like, and trust them. And so that's, to me, the essence of, how do you maintain and grow your slice of those 5 million transactions? Because there aren't any more out there.
Exactly. So Ken, one question for you. If there's a broker on the call that's saying, this sounds interesting to me, but I've got 7 relationships, I've got the contract dates on each of them ends at a different time. How would they get started if they said, I think I want to start moving down this road, but I can't do it all today, but I want to go, eventually. What advice as a consultant would you give to them to try to get moving down down the platform route?
Well, very simple, and it's 2 words: platform first. And when I say that, if you have existing vendors that are creating an environment that's not integrated for you today, which is a painful environment that you may have had to pay somebody to integrate. At renewal, I would have each one of the vendors that you intend to keep that haven't tarnished, the shiny ones that didn't tarnish, adopt the API and plug into your platform. If you're looking for new vendors as you trick or treat around the vendor fairs that franchise organizations have, or NAR or whoever, I would go up and make sure that they understand that in order to plug and play in your world, you don't want to have to go to all the expense to integrate, that you would have them use the API for a platform like Moxi Works and Moxi Cloud. Why not make your life easier at renewal? It's going to cause a big change in your organization for the users, your agents, and also for existing people and new people. And of course, they've got to go through the Moxi Cloud process with York and the team, but it'll be well worth it. And it's something they should do if they're committed to your account.
Got it. Question for you, York. I guess it's for actually for all of you, but I'll start with you, York. A couple of people have mentioned training and how important that is. So one thing that's interesting about a platform is now we're talking about working with Moxi Cloud as a company or Moxi Works as a company, but we also are now working with several others that have been plugged in, right? So if you picked a couple lead gen, a couple marketing and transaction management, how does the training work? Do you still work with individual companies, or do they come through you, or do you make that process simpler as well, or how does that work?
It's a great question, and I wish I had a magic wand sort of answer, and unfortunately there really isn't one. And Bill, you've done a great job, I think, of this, not only with us but with the other technologies you have. So I'd be curious to hear your reaction to this. Our view is all that we can do is provide brokerages, and we do this formally. We have a document, and we train the broker on how to deploy things. What we find brokers to be, and I'm generalizing here, but brokers to not be that great at understanding how to deploy technology. So that's the role that we as the cloud provider take. And of course, we have our own training and so forth for our own products. But for everyone else, we try and educate the broker on how to do good technology deployments. And by the way, a deployment is not, well, I sent the email. You know, there's a methodology to how you deploy any technology, and we try to educate around that. But then, honestly, it is up to the other vendors to provide their piece to whatever the thing that they're plugging into the power strip for. And the final thing I'll say, and Bill, you've done a genius job, as you mentioned, on this too, which is don't overwhelm. Don't launch 47 things at the same time. Just you got to do it kind of as a domino effect over time.
Yeah, and Bill, you said that you would have achieved your adoption goals already. What do you count the higher than average adoption once you've moved over to your head? Is it because of the dashboard, or is it the training, or how did it work for you? How did you get the adoption that you're enjoying right now?
Well, and we still have a lot of heavy lifting to do. Don't get me wrong, but I think it was two things. It was the simplicity of the platform, and it was, as York mentioned, what we did in preparation. It was a very choreographed rollout. First with teasers and here's what's coming, and really mobilizing trainers to get out there and to really embrace the agents. I mean, I'm a strong believer of hands-on, and so a lot of what we did and what we built was creating regional training venues where we brought the agents in, helped them understand it, lugged laptops around, sitting down one-on-one in the office. I mean, I think as with prospecting, there's no one special shining training method. I think with adults, adults learn in a variety of different ways, and I think you need to put them all out there. And some folks, and I have to say that out of all the vendors that I've worked with, I think that that Moxi has done a fantastic job at creating these little video vignettes and a help center that really helped us be able to educate the agents. Because when you're practicing on doing a present CMA at 11:30 at night, which is my top thinking time, and I need to get a quick answer, I was able to go to that help center and run, a 3-minute video and get the answer that I needed. And so we integrated that into our help and support center. In fact, one of the things that we did was when you clicked from our SharePoint platform to log in through single sign-on right into Moxie, we had a splash page, and it really was a help center of all the resources that not only Moxie provided, but also our own homegrown help as well. We did our own videos, we did our own help articles, and so that really helped to get them to that next step. And you're going to get to a point where the agents are going to say, okay, we did what you told us to do. We brought all our contacts over. Okay, now what do we do? So you have to be ready to embrace that sort of next phase and anticipate what are those questions that they're going to start answering. Because if they get stuck or they don't see any value, that's where the ship's going to start to sink.
Yeah, that makes sense. Lauren, can we switch to the last slide, because we're just about out of time, and we haven't had a whole lot of questions. I think you guys have gotten everybody thinking, which is great. But if we switch to the last one, there's the contact information for people that want any more information about what this is about and how it can help you, because it's a concept you kind of have to chew on for a little while. I think it's so different than what we're used to seeing. If you go to one more slide, Lauren, to the final one. So these guys have got, lots of people on deck that can help you better understand what it looks like. And I think you can hear from York's voice that he's not here to sell you something tomorrow. He's really trying to educate you on why this concept is something that you might want to consider, whether it's today or tomorrow or the next day or a month from now or 2 years from now. It's just something that this is where we're going. And it's an exciting time. So thanks to everyone for attending. Thank you for our 3 robust partners here that are helping you explain it. And again, if you need anything, go to go.moxiworks.com/contact Moxie or 206-455-8965, and you can learn more about it. Let's see if they have any other questions.
Marilyn?
I think we've got them all answered. Yes.
Marilyn, what's your costume for Halloween?
I'm wearing a very large pumpkin. Does that count?
Yeah, that's good.
What's yours?
I can't tell you.
You can't tell me? You'd have to kill me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Happy Halloween. I hope everyone has a great night. Don't eat too much candy or cider. And good luck. I hope everyone has a great rest of the year. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Marilyn. Bye-bye.